Okay, thank you so much for checking our attendance. You may now take your seat. Okay, so good day, class. Since we are already done with our last topic, which is the meaning and historical background of Asian literature, we will now proceed to our next lesson, which is the Chinese literature. And as far as I know, and I believe that I have assigned some of your classmates to report the topics that we have here in this chapter. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am!
For us to have a recap, may I know if these people are ready for the report? Miss Asuncion, for the facts about China.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Miss Bautista, for the 5 classic books.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Miss Aguilar, are you ready about the Chinese poets?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's good. Mr. Aspa, have you already researched about the Chinese philosophers?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Aspiras, are you ready for the teachings of Confucius?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Alino, are you ready for Confucianism? Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Aquino and Miss Aguilar, the soul of the Great Ball.
Yes, ma'am!
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now that all the reporters are ready, and I know that all of you are excited to explore the Chinese literature, let us now proceed to the reporting of your classmates. So, Ms. Asuncion, please come here in front and report about the first topic.
Good day, everyone. I am Merjo Asuncion. For this video, I will be reporting the first part of Chapter 3, Chinese Literature, which is Facts about China. China is officially known as the People's Republic of China. The capital city is Beijing, while the most populated city is Shanghai. Other major cities include Chongqing, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. China has the largest population in the world, with over 1.3 billion people as of July 12, and 47% of the population live in urban areas. China is the third largest country by area at 9,706,961 square kilometer. Language official, Chinese, Mandarin based on the Beijing dialect. Other dialects and minority language is Yu, Wu, Minbei, Minan, Ziyang, Gan, Hakka dialects, and minority language. National flag, red flag with 5 stars, adopted in September 1949 and first flown in Tiananmen Square on October 1, 1949. The color red on the flag represents revolution, and the large star symbolizes communism. The smaller stars symbolize the 4 social classes. The first one is the working class, the second is the peasantry, the third is the urban petty bourgeoisie, and the national bourgeoisie, all united under the Communist Party of China. Government type, communist state. Head of State, President Hu Jintao since March 15, 2003. But the current president right now is Xi Jinping, who took office in March 2013 and was re-elected in March 2018. China belongs to the continent of Asia. Bordering countries include Afghanistan, Bhutan, Burma, India, Kazakhstan, North Korea, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Mongolia, Nepal, Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Vietnam. China experiences typhoons every year and also suffers from floods, tsunamis, earthquakes, and droughts. China has the 4th longest river in the world, the Yangtze River, which reaches 5,797 kilometers and 3,602 miles in length. It also has the 6th longest, the Yellow River, stretching 4,667 kilometers and 2,900 miles. China is the second largest economy in the world after the United States of America. In 2003, China became the third country to successfully send a person to space. The Great Wall of China is the largest man-made structure in the world, stretching an incredible 8,850 kilometers and 5,500 miles. Independence, October 1, 1949. People's Republic of China established. Other notable earlier dates, January 1, 1912, Qing Dynasty replaced by the Republic of China. National Day, Chinese celebrate October 1 as the National Day in honor of the founding of the People's Republic of China. Other national holidays, Spring Festival, the celebration of Chinese New Year late January to mid-February depending on lunar calendar. International Labor Day, May 1, and Golden Weeks is official holidays. Head of Government, Premier Wen Jiabao, since March 16, 2010. National Anthem, Yiyong Jun Jinxingku, in English is March of the Volunteers. Written in 1935 with the lyrics by the poet Tian Han and music by the composer Nai Er, honoring those who went to the front to fight the Japanese invaders in northeast China in the 1930s. Administrative Division. China is made up of 23 provinces, 5 autonomous regions, 4 municipalities directly under the central government, and the special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau. Note: China considers Taiwan its 23rd province. However, it remains a de facto independent country. China is the world's longest continuous civilization, with some historians marking 600 BC as the dawn of Chinese civilization. The oldest form of the Chinese written language was found in the oracle bone inscription carved on tortoise shells and mammal bones during the Shang dynasty. Chinese is the world's longest continuously used written language. Evolution of characters occurs over thousands of years. Today, Chinese or Mandarin is the most widely spoken language in the world, with about 850 million native speakers and about 1.34 total speakers worldwide. The famous giant panda is found near the Yangtze River in China. China hosted the 2008 Summer Olympic Games in Beijing. By the way, Yangtze River became an important part of the economy since the Han Dynasty. In 256 BC, during the Warring States period of China, an amazing irrigation system, the Kingdom of Qin built, which is still in use today. These irrigation systems help provide a stable farming for China. China is among of the 4 ancient civilizations. China is among the most ancient civilization along with the Babylonian, Mayan, and Egyptian. There has been official documentation of China's history for more than 3,000 years. The Chinese name for China is Zhonggu, which translates as Central Nation or Middle Kingdom, reflects their ancient worldwide that China was at the center of the world. Zhonggu, which is still used today, was first used almost 3,000 years ago during the Zhou dynasty. And thank you. This is the end of my report. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that wonderful report of yours, Miss Asuncion. I hope that your classmates have gathered a lot of information from your report. Okay, next, we have Miss Bautista for the 5 classic books.
5 classic books of the Chinese literature. Number 1, the Book of Odes. Number 2, the Book of Documents. Number 3, the Book of Changes. Number 4, the Book of Rites. And lastly, Spring and Autumn Annals. The Book of Odes is a collection of 305 poems dating from 1000 to 600 BC. These are believed to be the oldest existing examples of the Chinese poetry. The collection includes refined folk songs, ritualistic poems, dynastic legends, and hymns for the ancestral temples. The construction of this poem is very consistent. Each line contains 4 characters. The lines are arranged in 4, 6, or 8 stanzas. Rhythm occurs infrequently. The Book of Odes is considered one of the 5 Confucian classics and became a basic text in the Chinese education. For many centuries, the Chinese have studied the text for its own wisdom relative to history, philosophy, ethics, and politics. The Book of Documents is an obscure compilation of speeches and records of major political conversations dating back to Confucian China. These speeches typically take place between the king, emperor, and his ministers. Tradition holds that Confucius himself compiled the text. It was revised and reworked over leading time to discrepancies between old text and the new text. Even prominent writers like Mencius did not accept the authority of the text after previous Han, Zhou, and Song dynasty revision of the books. It is a cryptic book that yields a very little save for a glimpse of the aristocratic dogma of the ancient China. The Book of Changes is an ancient Chinese division text and among the oldest of the Chinese classics. Originally a divination manual in the Western Zhou period 1000 to 750 BC. Over the course of the Warring State period and the early Imperial period 500 to 200 BC, it was transformed into a cosmological text with a series of philosophical commentaries known for the 10 wings. After becoming part of the 5 classics, in the 2nd century BC, the I Ching was the subject for scholarly commentary and the basis for divination practice for centuries across the Far East, and eventually took on the influential role in Western understanding of Eastern thought. The Book of Rites is a collection of texts describing the social forms, administration, and ceremonial rites of the Zhou dynasty, as they were understood in a Warring State and the early Han period. The Book of Rites, along with the Rites of Zhou and the Book of Etiquettes and Rites, which are worked together, known for the 3 Li, constitute the ritual section of the 5 classics, which are lay at the core of the traditional Confucian canon. The Book of Rites is a diverse collection of texts uncertain origin and date that lacks overall structure found in the other rites texts. Some of the section consist of definition of ritual terms, particularly those found in the etiquette and ceremonial, while others certain details of the life and teaching of Confucius. And lastly, the Spring and Autumn Annals. Spring and Autumn Annals is an ancient Chinese chronicle that has been one of those Chinese classics since ancient times. The Annals is the official chronicle of the state of Lu and covers a 241-year period from 722 to 481 BC. It is the earliest surviving Chinese historical text to be arranged in annal forms, because it was traditionally regarded as having been compiled by the Confucius. The annals record main events that occurred in the Lu during each year, such as the accessions, marriage, death, and funerals of the rulers, battle fought, Sacrificial ritual observes celestial phenomena considered ritually important and natural disasters. The entries are tersely written, averaging only 10 characters per entry, and contain no elaboration on events or recording of speeches. During the warning state period, 475 to 221 BC, a number of commentaries to the annals were created that attempted to elaborate or find deeper meaning to the brief entries in the annals. The commentary of Zhu is the best known for these commentaries, became a classic on its own right, and it is the source of more Chinese sayings and idioms than any other classical work.
Yes, and those are the 5 classic books of the Chinese literature. Okay, for your questions, reserve it later when all the reporters are done. Okay, so let us keep going and welcome the next reporter, Miss Aguilar. Yes, for the Chinese poets.
There are three China's greatest poets named Li Bai, Du Fu, and Wang Wei. The three have been described as a Buddhist recluse, Taoist immortal, and a Confucian sage respectively. They lived in the Tang Dynasty, and the political strife at that time affected all of their life very much. And this impact is evident in the poetry of all three. They have a book of poetry called Three Chinese Poets, which Vikram Seth translated it in English. Li Bai was known of the sheer amount of his poetic output, and he also often referred to as the saint of wine or the drunken saint. An example of his work would be the typical titled Drinking Alone by Moonlight. Du Fu. He is a contemporary and admirer of Li Bai. His ambition was supposedly to be a successful official, but he found greatest happiness that of artistic detachment. Typical of some of Du Fu's later work is a poem for Wei Ba. Wang Wei was different from the two poets already mentioned. He was something of a polymath, musician, an accomplished painter, and a poet. Huazi Ridge in Autumn is a good example of Wang Wei's poetry.
And there you have it, the Chinese poets of Chinese literature. Are you guys still enjoying? Yes. Okay, so let us now proceed to the next reporter, which is Mr. Aspa. Yes, for the Chinese philosophers. Oh, you should listen here, okay? Because this is a very interesting topic.
Hi everyone! The topic that we will going to tackle today is all about the Chinese literature, specifically the 7 great philosophers. There are 7 philosophers known as the bridge name Kongzu, Mengzu, Hanfeizu, Zhangzu, Mozu, Shinzu, and Laozu. You probably noticed that their names all have the zu at the end of their names. That's because the zu is added to their name as a sign of respect, considering the fact that they are great thinkers and great teachers. So let's start with the first philosopher, Kongzu or the Confucius. Living in the state of Lu during the spring and warring period 551 to 479 BC. Confucius was a great educationalist, ideologist, and the founder of Confucianism and private schools in China. His teachings focuses on creating ethical models of family and public interaction, personal and governmental morality, justice, sincerity, and setting educational standards. But sad to say, Confucius' ideas were not adopted during his time. So he left his country and traveled around the other countries to present his ideas to different rulers. He died in 479 BC. After the collapse of Qin dynasty, did Confucius, his thoughts, receive official sanction and were further developed into a system known as Confucianism. Confucianism later became the official imperial philosophy of China and were extremely influential during the time of Han, Tang, and Song dynasty. Confucius' principles has a huge impact in common Chinese traditions and beliefs, like a strong family loyalty, ancestors worship, respect of elders by their children, and of husbands by their wives, and calling the well-known principle, do not do unto others what you do not want done unto yourself. Number 2 is Mengzu or Mencius. He was a thinker whose importance in the Confucian tradition is second only to that Confucius himself. He was an interpreter of Confucianism and is most famous for his theory of human nature, according to which all the human beings share an innate goodness that either can be cultivated through education and self-discipline. Mencius' disciples included a large number of feudal lords, and he was actually more influential than Confucius had been previous. He expressed his filial devotion when he took 3 years' leave of absence from his official duties for Qi to mourn to his mother's death. Number 3 is Han Feizu. Elements of Chinese legalist philosophy can be traced to the 7th century, but it was Han Feizu who has developed the precepts of this political philosophy into its definitive form. Unlike the other famed philosophers of the time and faiths, it was a member of ruling aristocracy, having been born into the ruling family of the state of Han during the end phase of the Warring State period. Han Feizu is belonged to the school of legalism. His philosophy became influential and became one of the guiding principles of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. Number 4 is Zhongzhu. Zhongzhu lived during the late 4th century in the state of Zhang. He refused an estate office offered to him by the king of Zhou because he preferred a private and quiet life. Zhongzhu is created with writing in parts were in whole a work known by his name, The Transit, which expresses a philosophy which is skeptical, arguing that the life is limited and the knowledge to be gained is unlimited. Number 5 is Mozu. Mozu was born in Shandong province in China. He was a founder of Moism school. He founded a school of Mozu whose fundamental doctrine of undifferentiated love challenged Confucianism for several centuries. Mozu was originally a follower of the teachings of Confucius until he became convinced that Confucianism laid too much emphasis on a burdensome code of rituals and too little on religious teaching, at which time Mozu decided to go his own way. Mozu is known by many children through his work, The Thousand-Character Classic. This is a Chinese poem used as a primer for teaching Chinese characters to children from the 6th century onward. It contains exactly 1,000 characters, each one used only once arranged into 250 of 4 characters, a piece grouped into 4-line rhyming stanzas to make it easy to memorize. Number 6 is Xinzu. Xinzu was a philosopher who was one of the 3 great Confucian philosophers of the classical period in China. He elaborated and systematized the work undertaken by Confucius and Mencius, giving cohesiveness, comprehensiveness, and direction to Confucian thought that was all the more compelling for the rigor with which he set it forth, and the strength he thereby gave to the philosophy has been largely responsible for its continuance as a living tradition for over 2,000 years. Many of his diverse intellectual achievements came to be obscured as later Confucians focused on the misanthropic view attributed to him that human nature is basically ugly or evil, and beginning about the 12th century, his writings fell into a period of disfavor and neglect from which they have only recently re-emerged. And lastly, Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is the best known as the author of the Tao Te and the founder of Taoism. He is also revered as a deity in Taoist religion. Lao Tzu underwent a profound spiritual awakening and then traveled to the western frontier where he disappeared forever into the land of immortals. The last person he encountered was a gatekeeper named Yinzi, who requested that Lao Tzu offered to him and all humanity the essence of the wisdom that had been revealed to him. In response to this request, Lao Tzu dictated that was to be known as Dao Daozi. Dao Daozi, often called Dao or Tao, as the source and ideal of all existence. It is unseen, but not transcendent, immensely powerful, yet supremely humble, being the root of all things. The Daodaoti intends to lead the students to return to their natural state in harmony with Tao.
Wow, that was a good report, Mr. Aspa. I like the way you explained this great philosophers. Thank you so much. Next is Miss Aspiras. You may now share to us the teachings of Confucius.
Teachings of Confucius. Confucius did not claim his teachings to be original. He thought his teachings were the works of wise men before him. He hoped to bring peace, stability, and prosperity to China's kingdoms. And what are the basic teachings of Confucius? Basic teaching included behave properly to one another, so that order and peace return to society. Know their place in the society. Respect those above and below them, and treat each other justly. Set a good example if they are in the position of authority, and not do unto others what they would not want done to themselves. The great Chinese philosopher Confucius had a great impact on the culture of the Far East. Here are the teachings of Confucius consist of the Analects. The Analects is the most important of the teachings of Confucius. It is the collection of the speeches and discussions between Confucius and his various disciples that illustrated his precepts. That anyone, regardless of the station in life, could become a superior man by living in a virtuous life. Next is the Great Learning. Is a protocol for living, even the humblest action of everyday living. It is embodied by the practice illustrated by the 7 steps. And the doctrine of the mean deals with the means of achieving perfect virtue by following the middle way. It is a heavenly prescription of the golden path by which learning and teaching ultimately unfold into perfect virtue. The Golden Rule of Confucius. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The core of the Golden Rule is a moral obligation to treat others ethically for their sake, not ours, even if it's better than the way they treat us. Why? Not because it is advantageous, but because it's right. And because the way we treat others is about who we are, not who they are. The teachings of Confucius are focused on 2 interrelated areas. The social teachings of Confucius. Confucius taught that the people should have compassion for one another and to avoid treating others in the way that they themselves would not wish to be treated. What you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others. In order to be compassionate, people should avoid self-aggrandizement and be simple in manner and slow of speech. They should practice altruism and self-restraint. The political teachings of Confucius. Much of Confucius' teaching focused on the art of governance and how the rule should act. Confucius advocated for the true justice and compassion on the part of the ruler and the ruled. Only by being just a ruler would the ruler enjoy the mandate of heaven and continue to have the right to rule. As with his social teachings, Confucius believed that the key to the good governance lay in each man carrying out his duties, as prescribed by his position within the hierarchy. He stated, good government consists in the ruler by being a ruler, the minister being a minister, the father being a father, and the son being a son.
And that, class, are the teachings of Confucius. That is very interesting, right? Now, we will go to Confucianism itself to be reported by no other than Miss Alino. Okay, come here in front, ma'am. Good day, classmates! Today, I will be reporting about Confucianism. I know that you are very overwhelmed with our last reporter who have reported about the beliefs and the golden rule of Confucius. But now, we will take a deeper understanding about what Confucianism is. I know that Confucianism isn't new for all of us. We've been hearing this since we are in grade school and until now that we are already in college. We cannot deny the fact that Confucianism is really famous because of its teachings that touched so many cultures, especially here in Asia. I am sure that most of you must be very amazed and proud of Confucius and also thinks that maybe he is very proud of himself for inventing such good sets of virtues. And yes, I agree. But to remind you, classmates, did you know that Confucius himself did not even want to take all the credits of Confucianism? What's fun and good about him is that he said and admitted that he did not come from anything new. He just resuscitate or rejuvenate some of the tradition of the past. Most historians gave him the most credit even though he himself would look up to the early Zhou dynasty for a lot of his inspiration and traditions from the ancestors. But even though, we cannot still deny the fact that he had a spin or spice in it that made Confucianism powerful philosophy, making a unified China in Qin and Han dynasty. Maybe you are also wondering, why did Confucius started Confucianism and what was his inspiration for this? That is a very interesting story and this is how it goes. Zhou dynasty was the longest running dynasty in China. The actual political and military control by the Zhou kings only lasted during the first half of this period of the Western Zhou period. This was the time of relative peace. 770 BCE, Western Zhou came to an end and group of invaders and rebels attacked the capital and killed the Zhou king. King's son escaped to Luoyang, or the farthest east. This marked a major transition from Western Zhou to Eastern Zhou. The first part of Eastern Zhou period is called the Spring and Autumn period. Although Luoyang is the center of culture, the Zhou kings were not powerful in absence of an ineffective centralized authority. China was fragmented among numerous competing states. Eastern Zhou kings were too weak to control the power of the territorial princes. This situation led to the Warring States period, time of violence, civil war, assassination of rules, intrigues, and intrigues among the aristocratic families. And Confucius was born during the Spring and Autumn period. So it makes sense, right? Because he looked for a way to restore the moral integrity of the state and establish harmony in social life. Because Confucianism has influenced political and social life in China, its influence has also extended in Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Inside Confucianism, Confucius have also came up with his 5 virtues. And these are the Zhen, Yi, Li, Qi, and Xin. The Zhen, or benevolence, means not being able to endure or seeing others suffer, loving others, and aiding all living things. Righteousness, Yi. It means doing what is proper. In making judgments, one hits the mark. Propriety, or Li. This means to enact. That is, realize the way and perfect the refined. Wisdom, or Qi. This means knowledge. One has a special understanding and can know things before hearing about them. Trustworthiness or sin. This means sincerity. One cannot be deterred from his purpose. And did you know that these 5 virtues are not just a made-up of Confucius? Because the 4th century Confucian texts are known as the Wu Xing argues that there are 5 types of favorable behavior. And those are what I have mentioned: the benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and sagacity. The person who harmonizes and enacts 4 of these actions is good. But the person who realizes all 5 of these actions is a sage or a shengren, in accord with heaven. Also in Confucianism, it is important for them to honor and remember their loved ones who have already died. But this doesn't mean that they are honoring them as gods. Instead, remembering is seen as an important act of sin or one of the 5 virtues, which is faithfulness. He had also came up with what he called 5 relationships. And these are father and son, ruler and citizen, husband and wife, older brother and younger brother, and the friend and friend. Confucius strongly believed in the importance of inferiors listening to and obeying to their superiors. He also maintained these 5 critical relationships in Chinese society. In the first 4 relationships, there was a superior and an inferior. The superior was responsible for setting a good example for the inferior and protecting the inferior. The inferior had to obey the superior. If people did what they were supposed to do, social order would be restored. Confucius urged people to follow the traditional ways. To those who practice Confucianism, they also believe that the family and family values are very important. Children are thought to be very respectful of their parents and are taught to obey their parents. This belief is called the filial piety, or a love and respect for one's parents and ancestors. Now, maybe you are wondering with the greatest question in Confucianism: is Confucianism a religion? The real answer is, it depends. It depends on how we will describe or delineate what is religion. Confucianism started in religious department studies at some universities at the United States, but most Asians do not consider Confucianism as religion. But yes, Confucianism has a strong expectation from its individuals, and the government even follow its strict rituals, and it even has a temple. But unlike the other Abrahamic religion, Confucianism doesn't have a priest or a supreme leader. And also, they have no single scriptures like Bible and Quran. And most especially, you must remember that Confucianism does not promote the thought of having God. And also, the thought of having afterlife. So yes, Confucianism teach people how to behave properly like the religion does, but it is more considered as a philosophy rather than a religion. Also, Confucius has this what we call the Analects, which consists of 20 chapters with individual names but are not arranged with a specific theme. But the fun thing here is, Confucius did not write any text before. Maybe that wasn't the best way to teach the people then. His teachings was only written when he died. So, who wrote the Analects? After he died, some of his students began to compile what they remember their master said to them. So the Analects includes the teachings of Confucius as well as the discussions he had with his students. The Analects was not compiled by any individual. It was a collective effort of many over several generations. There are many passages that are presented in the form of dialogues between Confucius and students. And also some of the sections here are the observations of the students about Confucius. I know that all of us here are amazed about the Confucianism, but did you know that there was a time when Confucianism was criticized, condemned, and even forbidden in China? And here is a quick review of it. end this report, I would just like to give you an inspirational message that I got from Confucius and Confucianism itself. Did you know that Confucius spent his life on teaching the public because he believed that teaching is not a means of securing a livelihood or using this for material gains? Confucius himself believed that teaching is a way of life. His teachings provided moral for Chinese education. According to his students, he is a very caring and virtuous teacher. Also, Confucius had a government job, but he gave this up in order for him to teach people how to behave. And what's inspiring about him is that learning is important for him, for he believed that learning is the path to moral excellence. He believed that when you learn or study, morality will follow. So as you can see, Confucianism really had a thing with education and he really gave importance to this. That's why, classmates, we should always remember that all of us are very lucky to have this kind of opportunity and we should not waste it. Even though it's hard sometimes, even though we have this pandemic and everything that we are suffering now, this online class, these online stresses, we should always remember that this is a privilege for us and this is an opportunity for us that we should not waste. Just keep going because you are already there. Just like Confucius, you should study, you should stand up, you should speak up because you should be heard. Because you too, classmate, can be the change we need in this world. And that's it for Confucianism. I hope you have learned something new about this even though we have already known this since we are grade school. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me and I will do my best to suffice the information that you need. Thank you so much! Yes, and that is Confucianism. And of course, for the last topic, we have the soul of the Great Bell. This is a story class, okay? This will be shared to us by Mr. Aquino.
Hi, good day everyone. I am Jerry K. Aquino and I want to share this story. The title of this story is all about the soul of the Great Bell. Author, Lafcadio Hearn. The setting of the soul of the Great Bell was nearly 500 years ago in the city of Peking, now Beijing. Character, protagonist, the daughter of Conan, Yu, and the one sacrifices herself. Conan Yu, a worthy mandarin, brother of Congan, father of Congan. Antagonist, Celestial August, the son of the heaven. And I just want to read the summary of the story because it's a long story. Nearly 5 years ago, the Celestial August and Yu Long commanded his greatest bellsmith and mothers to create a bell that will create a sound that reaches 100 li. It was spearheaded by Conan Yu. They tried to cast a bell twice, but gold, silver, brass, iron would melt together. At first, when the Son of Heaven heard about it, he got angry, but he spake nothing. When the second time, the Celestial August learned about the situation, he got angrier and sent Conan Yu a letter warning him that if they wouldn't successfully cast the bell, he would be condemned to death. Kongai is the daughter of Conan Yu. She exquisite, but her heart is much more beautiful than her face. Kongai found the letter, read it, and keep mum about it. She told her jewelries and gold to pay as astrologer. She need to consult for advice. The astrologer informed her that gold and brass will never meet in wedlock. Silver and iron never will embrace until the flesh of the maiden is melted in the crucible and the blood of a virgin is mixed in the metal fusion. Thus in the third attempt, Kongai leaped in the crucible. His father couldn't do anything. He was sorrowful, but they need to follow the order of the Celestial August and Yunglong. They casted the bell with success as they ring the bell. It created a sound that is deeper, mellower, and mightier than any other bell. And the lesson of this story is learn to sacrifice and make right decisions. Just to sacrifice our life because of the unconditional love. That's all.
The soul of the Great Bell is about braveness and sacrifices. Komai, the protagonist of the story, is a daughter of Kuan Yu, the bell maker, sacrifices herself to save her father's life. Kuan Yu was asked by the celestial August to make a bell that the sound thereof might be heard for 100 li. They called the master molders and they began the labor. But when the metal has been cast, it was discovered that the result was void of worth. They tried the second time, and the result was even worse. The celestial August was very angry that he sent Kuan Yu a letter telling him that another failure will cost his life. Komai learned about it and consulted an astrologer and gave her an answer. Gold and brass will never meet in wedlock. Silver and iron never will embrace until the flesh of a maiden be melted in the crucible, until the blood of a virgin be mixed with the metals in their fusion. At last came the awful day when the third and the last effort to cast the great bell was to be made. Komai leaped into the white flood of metal, and the lava of the furnace roared to receive her. When they sounded the bell, its tones were found to be deeper, mellower, and mightier than the tones of any other bell, reaching even beyond the distance of 100 li.
And there you have it, class. That is Chinese literature. Isn't it amazing and fascinating for us to know new sets of information and knowledge about the Chinese literature? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, ma'am!
Yes, and of course, thank you to our amazing reporters who have spent time and effort for their classmates to have a background about the Chinese literature. Oh! It's already time. I'm sorry, class. I was carried away with our reporters. So if you guys have a question, just comment it in our comment box below and our reporters will surely answer it, okay? Okay, so that's all for today. I hope you have learned a lot of things about Chinese literature. Goodbye, class, and see you again on our next meeting.